Hello, everyone. We're waiting for everyone to join. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. This is Sabrina Paganoni. I'm speaking from the Healey and Healey and AMG Center for ALS and Mass General. And as always, I'm here with our patient navigator, Catherine Small. Thank you for being here, as well as Mimi, our coordinator who helps schedule and run these webinars. Thank you so much for organizing this week's webinar, as always. And tonight, I really have the distinct pleasure of having Jessie Markway, a research coordinator from fantastic site WashU in St. Louis. I'll ask Jessie to introduce himself and tell us more about this site. But the reason we are having this webinar tonight, and we can move to the next slide, the reason we wanted to feature a wonderful site and clinical research specialist is because it's so important to have everyone understand like the role of clinical research coordinators. We work with a lot of coordinators at our site. They're really the engine that makes every trial happen, and in particular in terms of the expanded access protocols that we and others are running. It's so important to have a close relationship with the clinical research coordinators because they are the ones who actually essentially run the site and make the research happen. So I think, tonight it's really very honored to have Jessie here. We'll hear from his experience, and I think it may be valuable. Again, if you have any questions about the role of clinical research coordinators, please don't hesitate to type them in the Q&A, and we're excited to hear what Jessie has to say. Jessie?
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm very happy and honored to be here speaking to you all today. So just a brief introduction. I'm Jessie Markway. I'm a clinical research specialist from Washington University, or WashU as we call it in St. Louis. So I've been here since 2017, so about 8.5 years at WashU. I've really seen our ALS Center grow a lot during that time. I feel like ALS research as a whole has grown a lot in that time. And expanded access as well, which is what we're talking about today. So if you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So first, clinical research, it's a very jargon-heavy field, so I just wanted to explain a few things so that we all know what we're talking about today. So first, what is an expanded access program? So an expanded access program, or EAP, these are ways for people to access investigational products outside of a clinical trial. So you'll typically see these in serious or life-threatening diseases. ALS, of course, meets that criteria. You'll sometimes see them in cancer or other rare diseases as well. And I would say they're becoming more common in ALS. I feel like we've seen more of them coming down the pipe the last few years. Next slide. And then, so how does expanded access differ from a clinical trial? So first, they both involve investigational drugs, which means that these are drugs that are not yet FDA approved. They're still being tested and evaluated, not yet commercially available. In a clinical trial, usually there are participants are randomly assigned to a placebo, which means some participants are getting an active treatment, some participants are getting the placebo. A clinical trial will then often include later an open label or active treatment extension, which just means once the placebo portion of the trial ends, which is usually somewhere around 9 months, sometimes more or less than that. At that time, then all participants are given the opportunity to transition to the active treatment and then continue to be followed in the study. On the other hand, expanded access does not have a placebo group. And so the immediate question there is, well, why would I be in a clinical trial if expanded access doesn't have a placebo? I think kind of 2 points. One, the double-blind placebo-controlled trial is still kind of the gold standard for, evaluating whether a drug works in the most efficient and effective way possible. But the second thing is that, and this actually comes from the FDA's guidance on expanded access, is that expanded access is for people who do not otherwise qualify for a clinical trial. So if you've been in a clinical trial or just looked into them, you might know there are sometimes very specific criteria that you have to meet. One of the more common ones is kind of how long have you had ALS, and sometimes a trial wants your first ALS symptom to have been within the last 2 or 3 years. So sometimes if you've had ALS for 4 or 5 years, that already kind of knocks you out of the clinical trial. There can be breathing scores or other things that you have to meet as well. So sometimes if you don't qualify for a clinical trial, there will be kind of this parallel expanded access track that you can go to instead. And then once you're in expanded access, really the main eligibility criteria is safety. So it's often kind of similar to a clinical trial when you start, in that you'll often have a screening visit. You'll probably, be examined by one of the physicians. You might have some blood drawn for labs and things like that. And really, this is all just the idea of we're trying to make sure that we think it's safe for you to start this investigational drug. And the other thing is that expanded access programs are often a little bit streamlined versus a clinical trial, which means there may be less visits that you have to travel to the site. There may be fewer kind of tests or assessments that you have to do. And sometimes there are kind of telehealth options as well that can be built in. Next slide. And then so if you're interested in looking into EAPs, how do you find them? The first tip is the most obvious one I could give you, which is ask your doctor or ask your ALS clinic team. If you're already involved in research, you can ask research coordinators that you may be connected with. They'll have a good idea of what's going on at their site, or they may know other things in the region that they can point you to. But of course, there are many resources online for looking into this. So I think your first stop should really be this NEALS website, and I see Catherine put it in the chat for you, so you can check it out. But so if you go to the NEALS Expanded Access page, they have a lot of really great basic information. First of all, kind of what we're talking about right now, which is what is expanded access and how it works. But they will list all the ongoing expanded access programs that are affiliated with NEALS. And from there, you can click the links and kind of see what the sites are for these programs, and they'll have information on who to contact and things like that as well. Next slide. The other resource is clinicaltrials.gov, which tends to be, it's a very comprehensive site, but it doesn't necessarily have the reputation for being the most user-friendly website. But what I tell people to do is just go to the homepage and search for ALS and hit search. I tried this earlier. It gives you like 900 results or something crazy. But then on the left side, you'll have this big long thing. You can scroll down of different filters you can do. So you can click, eventually you'll find the study type section. You can click expanded access. And then if you run that search again, then you can even further narrow it down to only expanded access programs that are available. So hopefully that helps you navigate that site a little bit better if you give that a shot. Next slide. All right, and then I want to go in a little bit, talk about WashU and our ALS Center here. So we are in St. Louis. The Washington in our name confuses people sometimes, but you can see the arch in the photo there. Dr. Miller and Dr. Buccelli are our co-directors of our center. And then kind of on the clinical research side, we have 4 additional investigators, 5 coordinators, a research nurse, and then many more people that I just want to acknowledge don't all fit on this slide, but many people in our clinic and in our lab that are all involved, and it's a really great group of people that I'm lucky enough to work with here at WashU. We're involved in many different observational and interventional research studies here. I like to tell people that I think everyone should be involved in research, and we really have kind of whatever level of commitment you're looking for in research, we have that. So if you want to give us a tube of blood at clinic and then go on your way, you can do that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's clinical trials and natural history studies and lumbar punctures and everything in between. So, I think we have good options for most people to get involved in research. And then as far as expanded access, we participated in 3 EAPs so far, which I'll tell you about. Next slide, please. So the first expanded access program that we participated in at WashU was for tofersen, also known as Qalsody. This is a drug for SOD1 ALS, so you may know that's a very specific genetic subtype of ALS. We launched this EAP in the fall of 2021. We were one of the first handful of sites in the US. I'm not sure exactly which number site we were, but in the first few. We were able to enroll 7 participants in this program, and then later tofersen was approved by the FDA in the spring of 2023. And I just like to point to this because I think if you're looking for kind of an example of why expanded access matters or is important for participants and in the field in general, this is a really good example of that. So we talked earlier that expanded access is for people who don't qualify for the clinical trial. In this case, the reason people didn't qualify for the clinical trial is because it had finished enrolling. They were finishing up their study and, evaluating their data, and the FDA was still looking at things, but there was this gap in time where there was nowhere for these people with SOD1 ALS to access tofersen. And so this program was able to kind of come in and fill that gap. And then also, I just want to say it was informative from a research perspective as well. And you can see here, we were able to publish this article at the beginning of this year. It's kind of our real world experience with tofersen. And really that just comes from following these people in this expanded access program. And what we were able to see is that some of them, their ALS stabilized, or some people even got a little bit stronger, or showed some kind of functional improvements. And that's really all things we were able to learn from doing this program, which ended up being really important. And the next slide. And then the other two EAPs we've participated in, I won't go into a ton of detail about them, but they've both been through the Healey Center. Both were drugs that were originally tested in the platform trial and then later opened up these expanded access components. And I kind of just wanted to use them as examples of how sometimes EAPs can be a little bit streamlined from the participant perspective. So Trehalose was an IV infusion drug that was a weekly infusion, but there was a home infusion option where there was a home health company that could come out to your house and do these infusions. That program has now ended. And then Pridopidine, this is an ongoing program. The enrollment is closed only because they met their goal of 200 people nationwide to be enrolled in this program. 25 of those people have been at WashU in St. Louis, so a pretty good chunk. And this program as well has some kind of remote visits, and even so it's a pill and we can ship it to participants' homes when they run out, so they don't even necessarily have to come in to pick it up every time they need more of it. And then lastly, I just want to say we really hope to participate in more EAPs in the future. It's a little bit odd to come on here and not say we have one enrolling right now and, come sign up for this right now. I know other sites may have things that are enrolling, but I'm very confident that we will have more here at WashU in the future. I think we're all on the same page that these are very important, and we're looking forward to being involved in more of them. And then last slide. So this is just if you want to learn more about what we're doing at WashU or stay in touch with us, our website, email is here. We've got all the usual social media platforms. You can scan this code and it will take you to the link tree that has all of these things. But so if you want to keep up with new studies or things that we're doing at WashU, feel free to follow us here or reach out to us if you need more information on anything. So yeah, again, thank you so much for your time today, and we're happy to take any questions that you guys might have.
Thank you so much. Really great to see, the diversity of different speakers that we have. And maybe if you don't mind putting back the last slide, just so that the audience knows that we continue to try to invite more people with different, areas of expertise on this webinar series. As always, the second week of each month, the second Thursday, it's an expanded access discussion. And so really happy to have leaders in the field from Duke University. Our colleague Rick will be here on July 10th. And then the fourth week of the month, we continue with our platform trial updates and other research topics. So we will have guest speakers from the Les Turner Foundation on June 26th. And then our own research access nurse, Judy Carey, on July 24th. And as always, Catherine is here on these webinars, and you can call her or email her if you have questions about research. Also, we have the ALS link, which is our newsletter where we use to send out information about research, and the webinar registration link is also on the slide. So thank you so much for your participation, and maybe we can take down the slides. We also post the slides on our website, so they're always available for you, as well as the recordings to, for you to go back and also share with people who may be interested in the information. So Jesse, I'll get started with a question for you. So one thing that we hear a lot from people living with ALS is, how do I get started? Let's say somebody is on a webinar like this, and maybe that person is interested in an EAP. How do they get started? What's your best advice?
Yeah, well, I kind of said it. I mean, if you're already, involved with an ALS clinic, the people there are going to be your first point of contact. But I know not everyone is kind of seen at these large research centers necessarily. you can certainly, if you see sites listed on a program or study that you're interested in, you can reach out to the sites. I know Healey has a really great kind of patient navigation setup that, Catherine is involved with as well. That can be a place to start. But yeah, really just, reach out to someone and get started. I'm always happy to, even if Wash U isn't necessarily the place you're trying to get to, I'm always more than happy to try and, make those connections. And a lot of times the sites will know the person that you need to be in touch with at another site, even if, there might be a general email listed on a website, but, sometimes I will know the coordinator at another site and be able to kind of get you in touch.
That's a great point. Catherine, I know you received a question. So do you want to ask that question?
There's actually one that did come in through the just now, but yeah, we'll inundate you, Jesse, with questions here. I was gonna ask, I know, the Healey Center for ALS at Mass General, I think the first EAP came onto the scenes around 2018. And I'm curious, Jesse, you've been there for about 8 years, you were saying. So I wanted to hear your perspective on, what the trajectory of growth for EAPs has looked like, as someone who's been at your center for so long.
Yeah, so I'll just say when I first started, I don't remember ever hearing about EAPs. It wasn't really something that was on the radar at all. So it's definitely just grown from that perspective. And I know some of it I think has come from the Act for ALS that was passed a few years back, which is, the NIH has specific funding for EAPs and ALS, which I think has helped grow it as well. But I think also it's just become there's more awareness that this is something that people are very interested in, and I think even the companies developing these drugs are much more aware of that as well and thinking about that.
Great. So I see a point here of clarification about when the NIH funded EAPs began. So that, as you know, the law that allowed these EAPs to be funded by the NIH was passed late in December 2021. And so the first EAP was started in 2022. So thank you for the clarification. And, a question, I see here a question in the chat about a recent EAP that was announced that's different from the NIH-sponsored EAPs, like the ones that were discussed today during this call. And so specifically, the person is asking about the EAP sponsored and initiated by Spinogenics. And so the question is that there is a cost component to the patients, which is obviously very different from the NIH-sponsored EAPs. And so if the question is to comment on this, I want to clarify that we are not involved directly in any way with that particular EAP, and companies actually can charge participants, but again, that's not something that we have done or intend to do. And again, it's completely separate from all of this that we're discussing on this call. And then actually, Jesse, I have a question for you. Sometimes people, don't know exactly the role of the physician or the nurse and the clinical research coordinator. I know you touched on this a little bit already, but can you tell us more about kind of, the critical role of the clinical research coordinators, and essentially from the point of view of somebody wants to enroll, if somebody wants to enroll in a trial or an EAP, I guess, what's the best way to connect with a coordinator, and what's the most helpful material or documentation to be shared to kind of help with the enrollment process?
Yeah, so if you if you haven't been seen at a site already, they're probably going to want copies of your medical records and things like that. So usually a coordinator can help you if you don't have copies of all of those things already to send. Coordinators they will know how to get in touch with medical records departments at hospitals and kind of expedite that process. So a lot of times they'll just want basic information like that. And then I guess just kind of the role of the clinical research coordinators in general is they're really doing a lot of, they're both upfront in that you'll see the clinical research coordinators at pretty much every visit you go to, but also all the kind of behind the scenes things that you maybe don't think about, everything from scheduling to entering all the data into the computer to putting the labels on all the blood tubes, like really every kind of all these little details the coordinators are really the ones who are kind of on top of all of that.
Great. There is a comment from a person who is seen at your center in your area. So the question is, if somebody maybe participated in other research programs, but now, they are interested in new options, for example, an EAP. How do you help facilitate access? What can somebody do, I guess, moving forward?
Yeah, so if you've been seen at our center already, please feel free to reach out to us. I know we had our contact information on the previous slide there. Hopefully you also know how to contact us. But we would be happy to talk to you about any kind of options that we have available. We're always willing to go through everything with you and find out what is the best fit for you.
Right. So there's a comment about, is there anything the community can or should do to advocate for expanded access? Or, sometimes people are asked to help with fundraising or with advocacy. I mean, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's just, I think it's helpful even just, to have it out there that this is something that the community really values and thinks is important. I know a lot of companies I know Healey and other companies and foundations do this where they have kind of patient participant kind of committees and boards to weigh in on studies. And I think providing feedback that way is super important. And like I said, I think it's already much more well known than before that this is, something that it really is important and matters. But yeah, I think just having any kind of voice out there is really important.
Thank you. And actually, I will say, it's, thank you so much for all the work that you've done at your site, because you really, obviously, clearly you made it work in terms of, being able to enroll a large number of people. So that's wonderful. And there's a question for you, Catherine, technical question. Are the posting, all these comments that you post in the chat, for example, with helpful links or emails, are they accessible in the recordings? I actually don't know.
So they are not accessible in the recordings. The recordings are just visually what you're seeing here in the conversation, but I'll put my email in the chat. So I know I've been I've been giving everyone a lot of homework in the chat here. So if you're not able to copy the links, or it's hard to, I know with Zoom it's hard to copy and paste things. So I'll put my email in there and you can always reach out and I'll just send you some of this information after the fact.
And the slides are posted
the slides
too,
are posted
so some of the
PDF
links
online.
are there too. Yes. Thank you. And actually, Jessie, thank you for mentioning the different patient advisory committees and different forums where, people living with ALS and their families can provide feedback. This is a great idea. Thank you so much for mentioning it. It's a great idea that, we and others are doing. I mean, I think it's so important to have the patient voice front and center. And so we do have, we and others have different patient advisory committees for different studies or initiatives, as well as recruitment and retention committees. So I also wanted to mention that, we always connect with NILS and the Curley or Clinical Research Learning Institute. Everyone who participates in that and is a research ambassador is always invited, that people can join our committees. Also, in general, if you're interested, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to have more people on those committees. Definitely, it's a partnership.
I quite literally just hopped from our patient advisory committee for EAPs to this call. I had to leave that committee 5 minutes early to come here. So yeah, very, very topical with the conversation.
Yeah. And I think you have a recruitment and retention committee coming up next week, I think. So again, that the conversation continues. We have regular meetings with different groups. And in addition, you can always reach out sort of individually if you have comments. But thank you so much. And Jessie, I'll leave you the last word for this webinar before we end.
Yeah, thank you again, just everybody, for your time. It was, really great to talk to you all today. And again, I'll just emphasize, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about anything. Those slides with all our contact information will be online. So, we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being on the call. Thank you.